In this lesson, we'll examine the strategy for handling table analysis questions. These are questions where you must use information in the form of a spreadsheet-like table to respond to a series of statements. For each statement, you will have two opposing options, such as true, false, yes, no, and so on. Now, an interesting feature of the tables that accompany this question type is that you can sort them by the different columns. However, this is the only kind of sorting you can do. You're not able to perform any spreadsheet-style programming. Okay, let's look at an example. Notice that the original sorting is indicated here. The default sorting is the sorting of the leftmost column. So as you can see, the title column here is arranged in alphabetical order. To sort the table according to a different column, just click on the drop-down menu to reveal the other sorting options. So, for example, if we go down here and select % change in downloads, we can see that our table has now been arranged such that the entries in that particular column are arranged in ascending order. Okay, so that's how the sorting works. Now let's examine the strategy for handling this question type. Your first step is to read all of the column titles to get a general idea of the table's big picture and to identify the different kinds of information available to you. Now, don't spend more than 10 seconds on this. You just want to get a general feeling for what this table is all about. At the same time, be sure to note any columns that require further explanation. In some cases, the column title doesn't adequately describe what that column is all about, so mentally note any questions you may have. For example, you may need some clarification on the criteria used to define rank, or you may need to find out which two values are used to calculate % change, and so on. Now, once you have a rough idea of what this table is all about, read the accompanying text. As you do this, look for the information that answers the questions that were raised as you read the column titles. At the same time, be sure to note any relevant units and any important calculations used to determine certain values in the table. For example, one column may have the title Consumer Price Index, and the accompanying text may explain how this is calculated. Finally, as you're reading the text, try to develop an understanding of the story that the information tells. For example, if the table does not already have a title, what title would you give it? Alright, so now once you've had a chance to get an idea of the kinds of information found in the table, your next step is to briefly scan the table entries. Once again, you should not spend more than 10 seconds doing this. All you want to do is get a general feeling of the big picture here. Now, in some cases, you may immediately spot some trends or relationships, and that's great. However, this is not your goal. Don't waste any time actively searching for patterns or trends. Given the huge volume of information in most tables, there can be dozens of different relationships possible. Since we don't know what we're looking for yet, looking for patterns is not a good use of your time. So rather than spend a lot of time looking for patterns, our next step is to carefully read the question stem. This is typically a single sentence that tells you what to do with the given statements. Now, since your responses to the given statements will depend solely on the question stem, be sure to slow down and take the time to fully understand the task at hand. You may even wish to summarize the directions to yourself. Okay, we're now ready to respond to the given statements. For each statement, try to identify the information needed to formulate your response. This often means identifying which column or columns requires a closer look. Finally, once you've identified the information required, determine the best way to sort the table to help you complete your task. Remember that the sorting functionality is there for a reason, and in most cases, there will be an optimal sorting option. So if you don't sort the table properly, you'll be forced to hunt for information, and doing so can lead to careless mistakes. Okay, the last step, of course, is to enter your responses to the given statements. So that's the strategy for tackling table analysis questions. Now let's examine some additional tips to consider. The tips here are the same as the tips for some of the other question types. Be sure to estimate whenever possible, be prepared to ignore most of the data, and do not confuse numbers with rates or percents. Okay, let's summarize. In this lesson, we learned the strategy for tackling table analysis questions, and we learned some additional tips to consider.